Call this meeting to order. Make the announcement that this meeting of the Seguin Independent School District has been duly called and the notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Section 551.043 of the Texas Government Code. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum?
All members are present, we have a quorum.
All right, so Ms. Reel, I'll have you lead us in the pledges. Where are the flags?
No flags.
We'll pretend.
Sorry.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Quick moment of silence. All right, moving on to item 2, we've got our TASB consultants here. So if y'all can give us a little rundown, I guess, of what we're going to do this evening.
I will, before we go into executive session. You all should have in front of you a booklet that Nancy was going to make copies of.
They're all
sitting at
the
Okay,
seats
good.
in the closed
So
session.
when we get over there, we'll look at the agenda, which is on page 1. But basically tonight, this evening, we're gonna look over the times and dates for everything, make sure we're all on the same schedule and everybody's calendar still works. And then we're gonna talk about the procedure for the interviews next week, how those are going to work, where they're gonna be held, the procedures that you go through, the setup, and we'll talk about those in depth. And we'll briefly go over things to look for during the interview, the things you can and cannot ask, which we have in outline. You've all been through training, either with TASB or in your current work positions. You've been through training about all of the discriminatory things that you can and cannot ask. So we've got a brief outline here, just a reminder. So that's in your process book for you. And then we will go through a process this evening where we narrow your candidates down to the 6 or so that you're going to interview. And so we'll be here to guide you through that to where we get to where we're going to have that list narrowed down. And it takes a while. So tonight you get 3 hours of board credit for being here this evening. So I'll happily report today.
Twice the salary.
And your bonus, you'll get your bonus. Then the last thing we will do this evening is we will either, you'll either compose or you'll pick your questions that you will ask the candidates. And you will have a hard copy of those questions in this booklet. So we'll get those done too. And we'll talk about that process. Everybody has 3 questions, but we'll go more in depth about that. So.
Are there highlighters in the room over there?
Can we do some of that in open session, so when people look online? I mean, not all of, I'm not saying all of it, I'm just saying, you were gonna have us look at the books, those pamphlets. Can we get those and because when people watch the videos online,
Sure.
I just like to do as much as legally possible in open session.
Sure, of course. This is all, this is open record. There's nothing other than, we don't like for the questions to get out there.
Yeah, I'm not asking for all of it, I'm just asking for what
That
we
would be
use.
the only thing, and that's why we do those things all in closed session.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm just saying, you plan on doing some of this in open session anyways, I'm just asking.
Usually we go over the agenda, which again is on page 1, and we briefly talked about that. I can talk about the process next week so that people can see how it's all going to happen. If you'd like to do that here before we go back there, I'll be very careful.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll let them get those booklets.
And then we'll
first.
have what we can from that packet posted as an attachment.
Okay, very good. That will work.
A lot of people in our community watch
Of
online
course.
videos, and so I would just feel better if they were able to have as much out here as legally possible.
Of course.
Any other questions before we go into closed session? All right, item
Well, I
3.
think
They're gonna bring those?
Oh, they're gonna bring them right now?
They're gonna
Oh.
bring them right now, and then we'll do this. I can't, oh. This might be better.
If it's working.
Push the button.
Mr. Lewis, did we get the PA system fixed? Is that microphone working? Oh.
Okay. So page 1 has tonight's agenda, and we briefly went over those things. We're going to look at the interview schedule for the dates and times. So let's look at page 2. You are scheduled to interview for your initial interviews next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, June 12, 13, and 14. First interview at 6:30 in the evening, and then the second interview at 8:30 in the evening. Is everybody good with that? Still? Okay, and if tonight we need to add a slot or delete a slot, we can certainly do that during the evening tonight. Sometimes you may want to do 7, and we can certainly do that. We can add a slot here or there, whatever we need to do. But right now we have 6 slots available, and we will work until we get to that point tonight. And then we will talk about the first interview, the setting and the procedures. We have not talked about where we're going to hold the interviews. It can be here in this building. It can actually be anywhere within the district boundaries. And so I know Cindy and I talked briefly about whether you would hold it here in the district administration building or if you wanted to move it off-site. Any discussion about that right now? You want to decide that?
I've been talking with Mr. Lewis and our admin Nancy, and our thought is, if y'all are in agreement, that the first round of interviews we would do here, over in the conference room where we're going to be this evening. And then the second round of interviews, we thought we may hold off-site. And my suggestion is at my place of employment at GBRA, I work down in the River Annex, so it's a big meeting facility on the river. So it'd be nice to be able to showcase parts of our city outside of the walls of this building. And I do have permission for us to hold those meetings there. And I talked to Mr. Lewis, and we're completely wired in that building. We can do anything we want to do. And we have a full kitchen and a nice, really big porch that overlooks the river. So, everybody have any thoughts about that?
Yes, and so second interview would be your top 3 candidates, and it would be with the spouse. There's a short social at the beginning of each interview. They're 1 per night, and those are scheduled on page 3 for the week of Tuesday, June 20th, Wednesday, June 21st, and Thursday, June 22nd, starting at 6:30 each evening. So it will be with the spouse. I will tell you, sometimes, especially in the summer, you might have families with them. It might not just be the spouse. You may have family attend. And usually it's a stand-up kind of finger food, or just punch and cookies, finger sandwiches, in order for you to meet the spouse and be able to talk about just general things. You know how important that person is going to be in this community. So I will tell you, it has changed who you think is number 1 to the number 3 and number 1 to number 2. It has changed the opinion after you meet the spouse in many cases. So it's a really important part of the interview process. A lot of times after the first round, boards tend to want to pick their superintendent, and I will encourage you to go through the whole process. It's really important that you complete the process and go through both rounds of interviews. If you're really strongly, you have really strong connection to one candidate, they'll be your candidate at the end if they're supposed to be, if that's who you're supposed to pick. So just follow the process and continue through and don't fall in love on the first date and follow through. So the first round of interviews will be here. I assume, will you be sitting here at the dais or will you be at a table down here?
I guess we need to decide when we go into, as a group, whether we're going to do those in the open or if we're going to do them in closed session.
Okay.
And I guess it'll depend on the candidate and also depend on what we
No,
decide.
it has to be closed session.
Closed session. It has to be
Has to
closed
I
session.
think it has to be. I think
For
it's
the
a-
initial interview?
it's-
Oh, yes, it does, because there's people that have not notified their district. It's a closed session meeting.
Well, and all of our candidates at this point are under the assumption that this is a closed search because all of our searches are closed. If for some reason you decide that this is not going to be a closed search, we'll need to notify them and let them know that. In fact, I had at dinner tonight, I had a candidate contact me and say, you know, I'm very interested, but I do not want my board notified until second round, if that, because, you know, if I make it to second round. Again, I will tell you, you will lose a lot of candidates if you decide to open this up, even during second round. If you get to your final three and you decide that, you know, and I know you're getting community pressure. I can only imagine that there's some community members out there that want to know, maybe faculty and staff, that want to know who your top or final three candidates are. But you will lose some of your best candidates if you decide to do that. But it is your decision. It's a board decision. It is not our decision. I will tell you, we will have to notify all the candidates and let them know that it's going to be open at whatever point you decide. So I guess that's a discussion we'll need to have prior to us notifying, or scheduling these interviews. That first round is closed, and then second round, is there still a feeling of wanting to have it open?
I
I was just saying, it's not like a law or something that says it has to be closed session. I'm saying
No,
it's-
but
it's a board- I'm not-
historically,
I'm
it
not
will tell
arguing.
you, just like she said, most of them are at the point where they're deciding whether or not they want to move or not, and they're testing the waters. If their board finds out that they're looking, it changes the whole personality from their board to that person if they don't get selected. And it changes the whole atmosphere within their district. And that, you don't want to do that to somebody. And I understand where you're coming from when we want to be open and transparent about this, but I'm sorry, but that's one of our jobs we were elected to do, and we need to do it. And we don't want to ruin somebody's career at another location just because the community wants to know.
One of the things that you might mention too is that you have 21 days after the name of the person is named for the community to know and to, so you have a period of time there that everybody knows. And anybody that wants to know and wants to do background checks and the things that they want to get on in Google, they can do that. And so, you know, it is as transparent as it needs to be, in my opinion.
Ms. Jimenez, I would strongly urge that this board keep it confidential out of courtesy and proper practices throughout the history of being here. I think it'd
Do we
be
need
good
to vote on this at this point? or-
You don't have it
It's just a
as an
discussion. We
agenda
don't have it
item,
listed
and
as-
I think it just needs to be an agreement.
My gut instinct is that we need to keep it closed and quiet because candidates protected.
Plus, you as a board are protected as well. I will tell you, if the top three candidates' names are out there, the pressure that you will feel, and it will have nothing to do with who's the best candidate. It's going to be who has a relative in this district, or who has a relative in that district, or who knows this person or that person. And all of you are very responsible board members. I have told all of these candidates how well you are all working together and how responsible you are. You're doing the very best job for this district, and that's all, you know, this community understands that. And
Well, they may or may not, but as Mr. Holt said, this is one of the few tasks that we really have is to hire a superintendent. So we were elected to office to represent our constituents, and ideally they'll trust us to make the right decisions.
that's right. Okay, good. So the final interviews then are on Tuesday, June 20th, the 21st, and the 22nd. At the end of the evening on the 22nd, normally the board stays together and decides who their top candidate is. So you would contemplate that evening after you're done, and then you're scheduled to go on a site visit the following week to the home district of the one candidate of choice. We still don't call them a lone finalist because that name has to be public. If you call someone a lone finalist, then you have to release that. So it's your candidate of choice. You will go on a site visit to the home district. 3 board members will go, and we will help set that up. You will talk to board members in that district. You will talk to faculty, staff, administrators, and community members. And then we encourage you to stop wherever else you want to stop in that community. If it's the chamber or the Dairy Queen, wherever you think you might get some good information, we encourage you to stop there and talk to people. You come back and the very next evening, you name that person your lone finalist. I will tell you, it's not a witch hunt to go on this site visit. It is a reaffirmation. That's what happens when boards go on site visits. We have had 99% of our boards go and come back and feel even stronger about their choice for superintendent after they come back, after talking to people in the home district. So we encourage boards to go. Not all boards choose to do a site visit. Probably about 85% of our boards now go on site visits, so that's something you can decide a little bit later on in the process, but keep that in the back of your mind. And then once you name a lone finalist, then it becomes public. And we will help with a press release. We'll help the district prepare a press release and get that word out and make sure it's all positive. And then there's the 21-day wait period where the contract is negotiated.
So the site visit would be on the 26th, is that correct?
It's on the timeline, yes.
Before next meeting.
I'm just wondering how logistically possible that's going to be. I guess it depends on where.
It depends on where. And so we'll have a better idea as next week and the following week. We can talk about that.
Now, if they're from the Puget Sound, you might.
It just depends. Any questions? Okay. Then I think we're good.
We're not going to close session. We're going to adjourn to closed session pursuant to the following sections of the Texas Open Meetings Act. Texas Government Code 551.074, discuss applications for superintendent position, and Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with legal counsel regarding applications for superintendent position. We will go into closed session now. It is 6:48. In the open session, it is 9:17 p.m.
Madam President, I make a motion that we interview a total of 6 candidates, having one as an alternate available if needed.
Okay, I have a motion to introduce 6 candidates and 1 alternate if needed. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Almador, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, motion carries unanimously. And at that, we will close this open session at 9:18.